we are the content, we can at least push back and make a difference there. Nigel, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. Great job. Now, look, we've got to find some way to be able to push back. Harmeet Dhillon is the perfect person to speak with about this tonight as well. She is a civil rights attorney. She represents James Damore, who was fired by Google for his personal views. She joins us now. Harmeet, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Tammy. Happy to be here.
Now, so what do you think of Nigel's proposal about holding social media accountable as publishers to where they'd be liable on issues like defamation, et cetera? I feel that would be even more chilling, because they're not the government, obviously. They're not compelled by the First Amendment to not act or to protect our rights. What's your take on how conservatives can protect themselves and push back in this regard?
Well, I actually agree with Nigel. Sorry, Tammy. I think that it is way past time for us to do that. And what Nigel is talking about is that these social media companies are all hiding behind the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, which gives them safe harbor, gives them immunity from being sued if they act as a platform, not as a publisher. Right. The minute they become a publisher and censor what they do and what they don't, just like a magazine, just like Newsweek or whatever, they can be held liable just like those publications. Now, what these social media platforms have done is they have absolutely, with their digital advertising, sucked the life out of traditional journalism, so that, you know, the traditional journalism outlets are on their last legs. They're teetering into extinction. And they're the places where they actually can get sued. If they do defamation, if they publish libel, they can be held liable, but these other platforms cannot. So between their market power, which I think is something that the DOJ should look at with antitrust regulation, and with their, frankly, false advertising to being open to everybody, which Twitter promises, Facebook promises, and YouTube to a certain degree promises, although they don't pretend to do that anymore. They're violating the law. And so, setting aside the First Amendment, I agree with you. This is not a First Amendment issue so much as a breach of contract, an issue involving other regulations. Some of the other things that conservatives can do is that we need to have members of Congress look at this Communications Decency Act issue, pass legislation. But we already have some government regulations in place that could help us. We have the Federal Trade Commission. We have the Federal Communications Commission. They could both take a hand in looking at the uneven application of the rules to these different
but Harmeet, I get very nervous. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not even a Republican. But when we start seeing, and I think regulations can be very good. We've seen that when it comes to the environment, that government does have a role, but albeit a very limited one. When we start talking about government agencies deciding who has to be heard and what must be done, I start thinking of things like the Fairness Doctrine, which made talk radio impossible to have. I worry about, again, this notion that when you're dealing with private/public companies, but they're not the government at the same time, Google had a very big role in government involved with Barack Obama's administration. They themselves, the market share, the value of them are bigger than some countries. I mean, Apple just, I think, became like the first time the $1 trillion traded company. Are you not concerned about government involvement in this marketplace framework where I think personal activism as the content producers can help make the difference on?
Well, of course I'm concerned, and frankly, government involvement as a conservative is the last resort, but sometimes it is necessary. So, for example, where we have doctrines that require equal access to certain platforms, for example, you have Facebook censoring Elizabeth Heng's ads when the incumbent's not censored. That is, to me, virtually an in-kind contribution by the platform to one side over the other. We can't have that in our system under our current laws. I'm not saying new laws. I'm just saying apply the current laws to the situation. So there's that. The other thing is that conservatives can fight back in the courts, or as you say, we're the content. But I'm afraid it's a little naive to say that. Unfortunately, we've had many years of American consumers acting like sheep. They think that Google is free, these things are free, and now we're in chains.
Well, we have to wrap it up.
They control our voices.
We have to wrap it up now. I think this conversation is an indicator that things are changing, and thank goodness for work like yours, Harmeet. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure.